Welcome to Newswire LA. We're just a few weeks out from choosing the next mayor of the city of Los Angeles. We've made every attempt to get the candidates to join us on set, but we've had no luck so far. Well, never to be outdone, we're going to hear these candidates articulate their platform, and we're going to lend you our perspective on the issues. Tonight, Eric Garcetti and Wendy Greuel tell you what they're going to do for the city of Los Angeles. All of this and more on Newswire LA, right after the credits. You might recall that we covered a mayoral candidate's forum here at Mount Gilead Baptist Church in South Los Angeles. Well, when you think about it, a debate is a debate is a debate. The candidates' positions are relatively solid, so we're going to use this as our template. We've edited out the candidates who did not advance and kept Mr. Garcetti and Ms. Greuel. So without further ado, let's get on with this election analysis. The first issue these candidates must address is the looming city revenue shortfall. It's been said by various sources that LA will go broke on the same day the new mayor is sworn in. Well, that remains to be seen. However, the real issues are city pensions and spending. These predicaments came up because the city, shall we say, lived large when the economy was booming, but never considered the fact that the bottom could fall out of the economy, which eventually did happen. Both Mr. Garcetti and Ms. Greuel were part of those city councils that voted in pension hikes and higher spending. Though they emphasize fiscal prudence now, that was not always their positions, and you can look at that in years past. Ms. Greuel conspicuously has a great deal of union backing, which, by some accounts and some polls, has hurt her in her run for mayor so far. The people of Los Angeles have grown weary of city employees and their unions, and this might have been a good stand several years ago, but it's not the best stand right now.
First question. What steps would you take to resolve the looming city budget shortfall for fiscal year 2013 through 2017?
Three things are important. One, to live inside our means. Every household and every business has to do that. And I've shown the past 3 or 4 years that we can balance budgets by coming together with our unions, by looking at things like pension reform, our healthcare costs, and the number of workers that we have. Sometimes we need to raise new revenues, and we've shown that as a way forward as well. But to me, the most critical way, which will help somebody who's out of work in South Los Angeles and balance our budget, is jobs. We need to grow our economy. And I'm the candidate for mayor with the best track record of being able to provide jobs in one of the poorest districts in the city, the third poorest district of 15, where 2 years running, the Chamber of Commerce, when they look at each different district, has said we're number one in job growth, number one in new business starts. I want to guarantee that every young person in this community who wants a summer job, like in the good old days, has a summer job. Because that drops crime, which means we have to spend less on policing, which means we have more money to balance the budget, and it means they're paying taxes, which again becomes part of that virtuous cycle. I want to see small businesses help. Here, where we see empty storefronts, where we see too many places where people have to get in a car or on a bus to go out of the community and don't spend their money right here. I want to recycle South LA dollars in South LA. And lastly, I want to make this a more business-friendly city. I want to take that small business and give them the opportunity to get on their feet because they're not paying a local city business tax that chases them either out of business or over the border.
But as we stand here today, we're talking about how we deal with the budget. And the first thing that we have to talk about is about job creation. It is all revolving around job creation. I'm proud that I was the architect of business tax reform in 2006, working with the Greater Los Angeles African American Chamber and chambers across the city of LA to ensure that we were focusing in on helping small businesses. I'm proud that when I worked for Mayor Tom Bradley, that we provided the kind of economic opportunities and the funding necessary to create those jobs. But today, those jobs are not happening in South LA at the level and the numbers that we need to have. We need to have someone in the mayor's office who is the job czar, who is bringing those businesses into the community and ensuring that in every part that the jobs are going to people who live in that community. To make sure that the city of Los Angeles is part of a partner and not part of the problem. And so as we look at jobs, one of the things that's critically important is having an educated workforce. And it shouldn't matter what zip code you live in, what kind of education you're going to have. So as we look at the city's budget, our revenue is critically important. It means having a strong port, a strong airport. It means having tourism. It means making sure that we also have the kind of manufacturing and the clean tech corridor and the kinds of jobs that we want to see happen. And creating hubs of economic activity, particularly in South Los Angeles. But it also means looking at how we're managing our dollars. As a city controller, I've identified more than $160 million of efficiencies and waste, fraud, and abuse, things that we could do differently to help balance our budget. Because we have to stop the cycle of crisis, of layoffs, and furloughs, and not providing the kinds of services that are so necessary.
The issue of medical marijuana is a continuing thorn in the side of the city of Los Angeles. We're not going to debate whether or not marijuana should be legalized, as we're going to leave that to you, the voter, and your discretion. You'll also, at some point, have an opportunity to probably vote on this issue. The problem comes in several forms. First off, the city of Los Angeles took an activist stance and is actually defying federal law by allowing medical marijuana shops to operate within the city limits. This issue will never be rectified until the city comes into compliance with the federal government rules, and that overall looks to be a non-starter in itself. Next, and the worst part, is that the city had no real plan in place to regulate the number of shops now operating. Only a handful of shops were planned, but now we have nearly 1,000 shops operating throughout the city of Los Angeles. And if you look at some of the main thoroughfares, you'll find 2, 3, and even 4 pot shops within walking distance of each other.
Question number 2. As of today, there are 3 competing ballot initiatives, and the Los Angeles City Council has put forth an ordinance, or asked the city attorney to put forth an ordinance to regulate marijuana dispensaries in the city of Los Angeles. The California Attorney General has indicated in a letter to the California State Legislature that she is concerned about the influence of gangs and organized crime in community marijuana dispensaries. If elected mayor, how do you balance the legitimate medical needs of some patients with the issues of crime, zoning, proliferation, licensing, and monitoring of these businesses to protect neighborhoods? Please be specific. Ms. Greuel, you go first.
What we need to do is ensure that there's the right kind of zoning and planning. The council and the city attorney have gone back and forth depending upon the laws and the different things that were put forward as to where it would be allowed. 3 proposals, which is going to be confusing to the public, and even now, they're just coming forward. What we need to do is look at those community plans and have succinct, direct rules as to where they can go and the kinds of issue of public safety. And to be able to ensure that our police department has the laws to be able to enforce those that are taking advantage of allowing for that medical marijuana. It is about enforcement, it's about zoning, it's about placement, and it's compassion for those that need the marijuana. As many of you have heard, one of our colleagues, Councilmember Bill Rosenthal, who was diagnosed with cancer, has medical marijuana as part of his survival and pain reduction. And so it is important there is a face to those who are using medical marijuana. But it cannot ruin our communities and our neighborhoods by not having that enforcement and focusing in on the rules that everyone has to follow.
We need help to be able to actually go in and to make sure that these drugs are out of the hands of young people, that we have a regime. And the first 2, by the way, weren't put on by the city council. You might have misunderstood if you listened to earlier statements. 2 were put on by folks out there gathering signatures. There's a third that we're putting on to try to at least say, of all of these, this would be the best way forward, to do exactly some of the things that I think all 3 of us have talked about. Keep this away from schools and churches and other sensitive uses, making sure there's a limited number that goes back to the original amount, which I think is a good number. And then also to charge a fee so that we can actually have enforcement to get the bad ones that are linked to organized crime, that are the bad actors, out of our communities, because my district has been beset by probably the most or many of these, and as soon as you take one down, it's like whack-a-mole. 2 or 3 more jump up, and we don't have the resources to go after them. Charging a fee will go there. And one last thing I'd like to add, a little different as well, is I want to make sure that we have some standards and whatever we can do for good workers to be there. In fact, we have, I know many members of the union here today. I know that the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, which my grandfather and grandmother were both members of, are trying to organize so that we can make sure we don't have more low-wage jobs. And for folks who work in the medical industry, who work in dispensaries, just as people work in pharmacies, we should have a living wage, we should have benefits, and we should make sure that they have decent working conditions as well.
The LAPD's current approval rating is actually higher than it's ever been, and violent crime is down in the city significantly. However, talking about the LAPD is always a great talking point that politicians like to glom on to make themselves feel like they are in touch with the people. With the exception of the recent Chris Dorner situation, which did find the LAPD making a couple of large tactical errors that's going to end up costing us $4.4 million, the LAPD has been on a great run when it comes to crime prevention and community relations.
Recently, there have been a series of incidences of alleged brutality at the hands of LAPD related to citizens in custody. Do you propose any changes in training and tactics by LAPD officers to mitigate this growing problem of citizen deaths, injuries, and lawsuit settlements? If so, specifically, what would you propose to the police commissioners you appoint and to Chief Beck?
Thank you. This is a question near and dear to my heart. As a little boy, I would be around the dinner table at night. My father was in charge of the division of the district attorney's office that went after police officers who were accused of brutality. And it was so bad back in those days, if you remember the Nwla'S case and some of the other cases that ripped this community apart, is we actually had officers, when my dad would go to the division house to let them know that they'd be investigated if these things happened, who said, you know what, Mr. Garcetti, if you were dying on the street and I saw you, I would step right over you and not help you. We have come a long way since the days of LAPD when people were talking about chokeholds and what they meant to African American men. We've come a long way since we've seen those issues of brutality. We've come a long way since Rampart. But the test of the department is not whether or not mistakes will be made, because they always will be. It's the reaction of the department when those mistakes are made. So I was very glad to see, for instance, when there was the accusation of brutality in the North San Fernando Valley, that immediately officers were suspended, investigated, and every officer had to watch that videotape the next day in the department. But this is what I'll ask for of my police chief and my commissioners when I'm next mayor. First and foremost, do you believe in what we do to implement constitutional policing? Second, what we do to recruit folks from our community to be police officers? Third, what can we do to make sure that we have cameras in all of our cars like we've implemented here in South Bureau to keep accountability both directions? In fact, the police officers like this, and so do civil rights activists, because a camera doesn't lie, even on the person of police officers, which some have talked about. In Washington, D.C., unlike what we see in New York, where young black men and Latinos are being stopped and frisked just for being black and Latino, in Washington, D.C., they've seen similar cuts in crime because they've asked their police officers to not wait, but to go and walk, not just the senior lead officer type officers, but all of them to go walk and talk and establish relationships in the community. That's the sort of policing that I want to see, because the best intelligence and the best reduction of crime comes when officers know everybody in the community, and I want to see that. I want to see that in my own district, in my own city. Time is up, but the last thing is in our jails specifically too. Put cameras in there. I'm proud to work with LAPD to have the first protections against sexual abuse of those who are in jails, which has been a problem too.
Thank you. Ms. Greuel.
You know, when we look at our police department, there's some good news. The ranks of our police department have African Americans at the top and Latinas at the top and women at the top that we didn't have before. For many reasons, that has made sure that our police department is more responsive to the community needs. I was there in Tom Bradley's office when the Christopher Commission was set up to look at the ways in which LAPD and the community were engaged, or in many instances, not engaged, and sitting at the table. Today, we have Connie Rice, who's an incredible supporter of mine, who was suing the LAPD on numerous times, is now sitting at the table with LAPD to solve some of our problems. John Mack, civil rights leader, has been on our police commission, addressing the issues of ensuring each community is represented and that there's not the kind of police brutality. But with that being said, training is everything. And the diversity of our police force, as well as ensuring that they have the right training to deal with individuals, whether it be domestic violence, homeless and mentally ill, and dealing with the gang violence that we have in our communities. The GRID program, which has been a successful program in LA, has brought together gang intervention experts and brought together the Los Angeles Police Department. Today, it's not us against them, it's about everyone working together. As mayor of Los Angeles, I will ensure that no one takes advantage or is abusing those that they arrest. That we have to set a tone at the top that says our police department and our police officers will be held accountable, but you will be part of that and be part of the training that is so important. And so when we look at the future of our police department, it is important to see that all of you are at the table when there's a problem. So that if an occurrence happens, and there's a lot of accusations, they sit at the table, and not only they look at the video, but they talk to one another about how could we have done that better, where were the problems, and ensure that lives are protected. Because the police department is there, and our officers are there to protect and to serve the entire community.
The question of job creation in Los Angeles is always great. Now, this is true in Los Angeles, on the state level, on the federal level. No politician can say he or she will, quote-unquote, create jobs. All they can do is lighten restrictions on business, and that has been the real problem in the city of Los Angeles. The recent failure of Measure A shows that the people will no longer put taxes on the books that will drive more LA businesses to states like Nevada or Arizona. We've simply had enough.
Unemployment in this section of Los Angeles is the highest since the Depression, and business opportunity is the lowest in decades. What are your plans to create job and business opportunities within your first 6 months in office, if elected mayor?
As mayor, one, I will guarantee that every young person from one of our communities, a Latino or African American community, or where there's a low-income area of this city, will be guaranteed a summer job once again. Two, I will bring job skills to our community colleges, which are, and I'll bring adult ed back to LAUSD. At LACC, Los Angeles City College, where we brought a job center using city money and put that together so we have a community college, LAUSD, and city working together. Three, looking at our schools, making sure that we get children job ready, not just with a summer job, but teaching them about things like entrepreneurialism so they can start